So, welcome, and I'm not really sure how to start this one, to be honest with you, because I never really expected to be at the point when I started the channel where I'd be talking about having 5,000 subscribers on my page. But here we are. Somehow I've managed to stumble myself toward that goal, in spite of the fact that the way that I run my channel from YouTube's perspective is probably not ideal. The only thing that I really do well from their point of view, looking at it through the cold, hard lens of the algorithm, I'm sure, is the fact that I upload regularly. Other than that, on matters of sort of content diversity perhaps, and an audience interaction and making use of other things such as streaming, I definitely have a lot that I could improve on if I was going to make a success of this channel going forwards. Maybe that can happen, but I think considering the way that I've gone about things up until this point, I'm just happy to have made it up until this up to this stage, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, especially considering the fact that, you know, with the content I've made, it's been in a rather niche zone for the most part, obviously with Third Age making up the vast majority of my content, and submods for it as well. It's fairly surprising to me that I've been able to get to this point, but here I am, and I can only say thank you for that. And it is worth saying as well that stay tuned until the end of the video, because hopefully there will be something else that I will be doing to sort of commemorate the fact that I've reached this nice round number. It won't be a part of this video, but it will be something that will hopefully happen in the near future, which will hopefully also change up the way the channel works a little bit, because I do think that I need to make use of some other aspects of what you can do on YouTube, rather than just doing what I've done up until this point. Although, of course, with YouTube being what it is, and how I've done things up until this point, things won't be changing too drastically, but it is a positive change before anyone starts worrying, of course. If there's been one thing that this lockdown has been good for, I think it has been the fact that it has made me able to think about things a little bit more, and maybe, you know, plan out things a little bit better, because that's definitely something that I haven't really done. I've just sort of rolled with the punches for the most part in my channel up until now, and hopefully we can get a little bit more organised well, for the near future at the very least. Because I didn't really expect to be hitting the 5,000 subscriber mark this soon, I have to say. I was expecting it to happen sort of at the beginning of the year, looking at the rate of increase. I was kind of looking at around late August, early September, maybe even later than that, before I actually hit this milestone. So the fact that it has actually come this soon has caught me a little bit off guard. But hopefully we can rapidly readjust to that. So yeah, for now, I will say thank you, but do stay tuned to the end of the video for the hopeful announcement that something will be happening in the near future, which will change things up a little bit. But the main bulk of this video is, of course, going to be the Q&A, which I said I was going to do. So I just posted up on YouTube a little message, and if anyone had any questions for me, I would answer them regardless of what they may be. So I'm going to answer them here, and then we'll get into what I intend to do in the future after that. So let's have a little look at what people say. Obviously, you know, there's a lot of people which will just be saying sort of congratulations and so on and so forth, and they don't have a sort of an actual question. But anyone who said congratulations to me, thank you very much, because again, I didn't really think that it would get to this point where I'd be talking about this, like I said. So, you know, the fact that people are offering me congratulations is something that I'm not really someone who's very good at taking compliments, to be honest with you. So I'll say thank you to all of those people, just as an overall group, I'll say. So, question number 1 at the top here. Alex Arcanus Artorius, who, that will of course be Artorius from many replays that we've seen in the past. How do you like factions being specialised while teaming up with other factions to cover the gap or weakness of a faction for Silmarillion? So this is sort of pointing to the fact that Silmarillion has gone for what Reforged went for in 0.97 with its patch, so less focused around individual 1v1s on basic maps and more sort of going their own way. And potentially, of course, this does mean that you could have a bad matchup. For example, in Silmarillion at the moment, probably the worst matchup I could suggest would be Tolling Gowerhoth trying to go up against the Elves of Assyrian, because Gowerhoth have got very poor armour values, you know, and in terms of overall quality in melee, they'll be lagging behind the Green Elves as well. So the archers and the melee defense means that Assyrian have got a rather natural advantage over them. It's not insurmountable, but it is still a thing. I have to say I quite like it. As much as I think balancing around... I do kind of agree with J Monster on this point, because I have heard his reasoning for doing this sort of balancing in the past. And that is the fact that if you balance everyone around being good on basic 1v1s, ultimately you're going to end up with every faction having mostly the same thing. And that's true, because in any game, certainly in Medieval 2 as a Total War game, there's going to be an optimal way to play. And if you don't have access to being able to do that optimal way to play, then you're going to be not as good in a 1v1. So if you balance everyone behind sort of being good in 1v1s, then you're going to end up with mostly the same things. There is a little bit of leeway, but for the most part, I prefer it this way. For a start, I don't really... Well, I do like 1v1s, but they're not really what gets my juices flowing anymore with regards to Medieval 2 content and the like, just because I've seen enough of it up until this stage that I just enjoy the larger battles, and that's my opinion. I know that other people think differently. I know Kuro, for example, Kuroguro-chan, who's one of the lead developers on Reforged, thinks quite differently about that. But I would have to come down on the side of J Monster in that particular back and forth, I think. So, question 2. When you reach 20k, would I still be your favourite sub? From Aniket Das. I think it's quite optimistic to think that I will reach 20k, to be honest with you. But sure, why not? And there goes the dog again, at an inopportune moment. Have you ever played Lord of the Rings online? I have not. My MMO experience is entirely condensed in Star Wars: The Old Republic, and that was that's a whole nother matter. But no, I haven't played Lord of the Rings online. To be honest with you, my Lord of the Rings experience really starts and ends with the movies and with the Third Age mods, to be honest with you. I'm a filthy casual who hasn't even read the books, which I'm sure will greatly shock many people considering the amount of Lord of the Rings content that I played out. But to be honest with you, most of the Lord of the Rings knowledge I have has come through osmosis over time, more so than first-hand experience, and the fact that I am friends with people who are very much into Lord of the Rings and who have read the books multiple times. But yeah, I mean, I haven't played Lord of the Rings online. It's a fairly old game at this point, so it's probably not going to be the sort of thing which makes an appearance. But something else like Battle for Middle-earth 2 may very well at some point, but no plans for that in the immediate future. Now, question 3. Would you do an elite versus fodder video again, but with the elites having upgrade everything and go against hordes of fodder to see how many they could kill before the numbers of the fodder take their toll? I just want to see the Pharazim Swordmasters dismantle every single fodder unit. I don't have a plan to do that again, actually, but Windy Pops, who is another person who has posted up YouTube content on Third Age, I think is doing something like that now. So if that's the sort of thing you want, then I would point you in his direction. The reason that I don't do that is because it's for a similar reason actually to the top 10s and the top 5s. Partially because there are so many units in the game at this point that I don't want to leave a series half finished, so to speak. And there are so many units in the game that you could do that with, that it would take me a long time to get through. Even running with my schedule as it is at the moment, it would take me a long time to get through that. And that's part of the reason why I'm doing the tier lists at the moment, because it's something more manageable. It's something that is finite to a certain extent, and I won't have to go through hours and hours of doing the same thing over and over again to get actual results. It was easier to do that sort of thing in the past, in earlier versions of Third Age Reforged, and even Standard Third Age when I was first starting out, because the rosters and the types of units that were available were more condensed, whereas now it's much more varied and complicated to do something like that. And even to a certain extent, you can't even be objective anymore, because some units are going to be subjective in how what sort of light you see them in, whether you like them or not. A good example of that would probably be something like the Rangers, for example. Like, the Rangers are obviously fantastic damage dealers, and no one's going to doubt the fact that they're really, really strong when it comes to getting their kills. However, on an open field, they're less useful. So, I mean, it's very difficult for me to do, say, a top 10 archer list. I might be preempting a question that comes later. Yeah, it's the... I've just lost my train of thought. But yeah, I was talking about the Rangers. You can't really be objective with that sort of thing anymore, because if you're talking about damage dealing capabilities of archers, the top 10 would be entirely Rangers. However, could you really say that, you know, the Rangers are going to be better in every situation in comparison to something like the Watchers of the Golden Wood? It's a similar sort of thing with this elite versus fodder stuff, because generally speaking, it would be interesting, I think, to see, just in general, whether sword and board more defensive units or sword masters would do better in that situation. I would imagine it would be sword masters. But once you know that, then it's just a matter of then sorting whatever unit is superior by stats. And I would imagine that would be sword masters. So I could say right now that I think Pharazim sword masters would be at the top, out sort of discounting any sort of really specialist units, of course. And then you'd have the Noldorin blade masters. Then it would probably be the Temple Executioners. Then it would probably be the Haven Guard, and so on and so forth, because that's just how it works. So, bit of a long-winded answer to that question from Benjamin Rowley, but yeah, I'd say if you want something like that, Windy is starting up a series that is that. And I don't want to tread on his toes, because he's a good lad. Congrats, man. I love the content. Now, what might be your favourite Third Age faction to play from mediocre gameplays? Kind of depends on the situation, I would say. Factions that I enjoy, I think it might be easier just to go through, because I'm sure there's probably going to be other sort of questions on what my favourite factions are. I think right now I'm just going to go through each sort of sub-race, as it were, and talk about and just mention what my favourite faction to play is in there. So for the Elves, I would say it's Lothlorien, just because I think their missiles are just too good to ignore, and the fact that ultimately, while Imladris is superior in melee, the difference isn't that great, to be honest with you, and I think there's a little bit more flexibility with Lothlorien. With the Dwarves, I would say it's Khazad-dûm, just because I have a personal distaste for Erebor and how they go about their business. Although having said that, Khazad-dûm in this patch are also pretty scary indeed. The Dwarves in general, though, play in mostly the same way. It's just personal preference that leads me to pick Khazad-dûm there. As for the Western Kingdoms of Men, I think I would have to go with... that's probably the most difficult one, to be honest with you, but I think I'd go Gondor just for old time's sake. I think that the only thing that I perhaps don't like so much about Gondor is the fact that you're mostly forced to be a little bit more defensive and on the back foot. But I do feel as though they're a little bit more reliable than most other factions. Arthedain would be perhaps my other choice in there, just because you have a little bit more in terms of cavalry and damage-dealing range units, which will allow you to be a little bit more proactive. But I think that I would have to go Gondor regardless. As for the evil men, I'd go Rudauer, because I think their ability to be aggressive on the front foot and use their javelins as well as that really nice supporting unit is what gives them the edge over other evil factions for me, evil men factions anyway. Rune are very nicely balanced. Umbar are probably pound for pound the strongest of all the evil men, because they have the ability to field a really nice high quality army. But personally, I do prefer Rudauer. And then you have the Orcs, which I'd have to go Angmar, because Angmar are just so potent moving forward if you use them correctly. They've got a good amount of survivability, a good amount of damage that they're capable of dishing out as well. They're a little bit one note in comparison to Mordor. Mordor have got a little bit more in terms of their ability to support with archers and the like, but I think the extra muscle that Angmar have on the front line, to be honest with you, is worth it for me. So that would be my spread. Which one I prefer the most out of those? Again, it does change a little bit as well. Like when most people ask me what faction is my favourite, like I generally don't answer, because it does change from like patch to patch almost. Because obviously there's a lot of changes that do take place, but that would be a good spread, I think, of the factions that I like to play. So then we have Gabriel Canejo. Congrats, man, you really deserve it. What are your favourite and least favourite factions to play with or against? Are you going to do the top 10 unit videos again? I love those and would like to see them. So yeah, I mean, I've already answered most of those, to be honest with you. Top 10s, for the reasons that I've already said, is very difficult because of how the game has evolved. Least favourite factions to play with or against? That's a pretty interesting one. I don't think there's any factions that I don't like playing as, outside of like maybe Dunland, because Dunland are like not really a faction that's intended to be balanced. I think the faction I'm probably worst with and don't really have that much success with personally would probably be Linden, just because that lack of armor does tend to bite me a little bit. Like generally speaking, when I do decide to go on the offensive, be a little bit more aggressive, it's a little bit messy, and Linden don't respond too well for that, because you can punish them because of their low armor, so you can really do a lot of damage to them quite quickly if you get into the right position. They're deadly in melee and up close with their javelins and pikes, but yeah, I'm not very good with Linden. I actually quite like playing as Linden, but I'm not very good with them, to be honest with you. Favourite faction to play against, I think, would definitely be the Hobbits. I mean, I haven't played against them actually since the latest patch came out. But I would say that the hobbits in the last patch were incredibly annoying, and I didn't like playing against them at all. Obviously Erebor as well. So those would be my two. Next up we have J-Monster. What's kept you regularly posting content over the last 2 years? A couple of things really. I think that the first thing is the fact that it has essentially been my part-time job. And that has a way of keeping you motivated as well, because basically if I stopped regularly posting content and sort of getting in it's less money than a part-time job, to be honest with you, but it's enough to the point where you won't have to sort of get a part-time job alongside the university studies. And obviously this is far preferable than doing a horrible retail job in a place like Primark, for example. So that is one reason why. The other reason why is that I haven't actually lost my enjoyment of it. There have been moments where I've been less eager to do it, and I would say that a big part of that is the fact that I've never really been able to branch out into doing more than one type of content. If I was able to do that, then there would be no real issues with burnout ever, and that is still something which I'm honestly still puzzling over myself, because burnout does sort of come and go. I've been able to sort of ride through it, but yeah, I think just the fact that it has been sort of my part-time employment alongside my studies, so it's been, technically speaking, important to keep it going, and also just the fact that I haven't lost my enjoyment of it. Hopefully that will continue, of course, but with the fact that I'm sort of closer to the end of my studies certainly than the start, changes will have to happen sort of in the further future. For the time being, though, things are a little bit up in the air, as I mentioned, and so for the immediate future, nothing's going to change. But yeah, I would say that's the reason why. So thanks, because obviously J-Monster has been sort of posting content alongside me pretty much since sort of Reforged started to sort of come into the public eye a little bit more. And to start with, I would say he definitely posted higher quality stuff than I did. But obviously he's actually got an actual job rather than the ability to sort of be a little bit more fast and loose with university stuff. So yeah. King Amar, why are you such a good commentator? Great videos, bro. I look forward to everyone. Thumbs up, smiley face. Why am I such a good commentator? I think I'm a fairly mediocre commentator, to be honest with you. But cheers, man. I don't know. Only you can decide why you think I'm good. Okay, next up we have Joseph Rag. First of all, congratulations, a huge milestone. Now on to the question. Have you read the Silmarillion? If so, what did you think? And if not, are you planning on doing so, seeing that Silmarillion Total War is very lore-centric? There's actually a reply to this one as well. Recommended by Stewie. So I've already kind of answered that question in the sense that no, I haven't read the books. Do I plan on doing so? I didn't really sort of pencil it into a schedule. I mean, it's sort of one of those nebulous things which I always mean to get round to but never do. Silmarillion Total War being very lore-centric. To be honest with you, a lot of like sort of the more obscure Lord of the Rings lore, which isn't really immediately apparent, is something that I have learnt, as I said, through osmosis. And bits and pieces of the Silmarillion, like the Nerniath Aeonadiad, the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, for example, is something which I just learnt through interacting with people who do know about it. I think if I was going to do like a sort of actual lore reenactment of a Silmarillion battle, I probably would at the very least read the section that pertains to it so that I can be a little bit more informed, so that I don't come off like a complete tool when I talk about it. I mean to, but I don't plan to, if that makes any sense, because there's not really much sense in me actually planning to do much at this point in time because of how changeable things are. But yeah, I mean, I hope that answers your question. Bimla Gotra, how do the Great Eagles unit work? Now, I haven't actually showcased the Great Eagles on a replay yet, but I have seen them, and essentially they work in the same way that Lance Cavalry does. They may look as though they fly, but they cannot fly over impassable terrain, and they cannot fly over units in the same way that you can do in Warhammer. And the reason for this is, in order to jury-rig the way that they work, they are effectively a Lance Cavalry unit, sort of a monstrous cavalry unit even, so they have a huge charge bonus as well. So you can look at them as being really, really scary lancers. and that would be how I would describe the Great Eagles. There are sort of little bits and pieces that you can talk about with the Great Eagles, but like that is the way that you look at them. Like if you put like a line of spears in front of your like sort of more fragile archers, the Great Eagles cannot simply fly over the spears and get the archers. They will be intercepted by the spears if you do that. Obviously it is a little bit janky the way that they've had to make the Great Eagles work, but that's just the nature of having of Medieval 2 being what it is. The fact that they work at all is a testament to how well the dev team have managed to learn how the ins and outs of Medieval 2. And that's been something else that I would sort of really praise the dev team for, because obviously Medieval 2 is a game that's fairly old at this point in gaming terms, and patch by patch sort of more is sort of uncovered sort of behind the wallpaper of how the game has been made, as it were. And yeah, it's interesting to see all these new things slowly but surely come out of the woodwork. And I mean, with every passing patch, I think they've sort of plumbed the depths of what Medieval 2 is capable of, and then they add something like that and change my mind again. One wonders when Medieval 2 will finally run out of secrets to show the dev team, but we shall see. Next we have D. Sepriat. Where are you from? I think from my accent it's obvious I'm from England, but I live in the southwest of England. I am in Plymouth, which if you look it up on sort of like Google Maps or something, the southwest of England is basically that little bit that sort of sticks off the bottom end of England there, and that's where I'm at. So yeah. Next we have Brooks Feng. What got you to start playing Reforged? When will you do a face reveal? What is your favourite faction to play? All decent choices, and congrats. Can't wait till you get 10k. What got you to start playing? Well, I've already done sort of favourite factions to play, so refer back to earlier on in the video. What got you to start playing Reforged? To be honest with you, I was just playing regular Third Age at the time, and I saw Reforged was being developed, and I just hopped in. I mean, it was quite a natural transition for me, to be honest with you. And at that point in time, like I was with Medieval 2, like I was mainly just in it for like the multiplayer stuff, like, and Reforged sounded ideal for me from that point of view, and that's what first sort of got me into the game and the community in the first place. So really it was just ideal timing, to be honest with you. At the time I was just playing regular Third Age and making a few bits and pieces to do with it. That was sort of at the dawn of my channel. And very quickly after that, Reforged sort of revealed itself as being in development, and I just hopped in. And the rest, as they say, is history. When will you do a face reveal? This is something that I'm not like opposed to. I feel as though it's the sort of thing that people think that I'm maybe against, just because I haven't done it up until this point. It's not really, it's just the fact that there hasn't really been a good moment to do that. You could say that this maybe, but we'll get more onto that at the end of the video, I think. So possibly soon with a face reveal. I mean, it's the part of the reason why I haven't done it up until this point is it doesn't, based on the content I've done up until this point, it doesn't really add anything, if you know what I mean. Just having my face in the bottom corner while like there's this like large scale Lord of the Rings battle going on doesn't really add much to the content. But possibly soon, for reasons that I'll get onto later in the video. There is actually a reply to this one as well, just making sure that it's not a... I think he has shown his face in his first few vids. No, I haven't, actually. So, I don't know... Well, possibly. You might actually have been one of the ones who did actually notice that. But again, more on that in towards the end. Next we have Bimla again. Why did you name your channel You Mad Commander, and what was your inspiration in creating this channel? My name is actually just something stupid. It was effectively, I needed, this was way back in 2012, I needed a handle to go on to the, of all things, the BioWare forums, to talk about the controversy surrounding Mass Effect 3. And one of my favourite characters in Mass Effect 3 was the Prothean called Javik, who actually is my my avatar on YouTube. So yeah, that was why. It's kind of stupid, to be honest with you. Like if I had the ability to sort of change up things, so to speak, I would, because I never really intended this channel to be something that blew up. But I'm kind of stuck with my stupid name now, so there it is. And what was your inspiration in creating this channel? Boredom, to be honest with you. There was one summer where I was really rather sort of bored, just sort of waiting for term to start, and there was still a month or so left to go, so I decided to make some basic faction overviews for Vanilla Third Age, and that was where the ball started rolling, and it hasn't stopped rolling since then. And next we have Ross Nelson. What clan are you in if you are in one? I'm not, to be honest, at least not officially. I mean, technically speaking, I guess I am. I mean, I'm in a bunch of those like sort of clan discords for Reforged on for Reforged. I'm in a bunch of those discords, but I'm not really officially part of a clan, I don't think, unless by joining those discords I sort of pledged my loyalty. But if that's the case, then I've pledged my loyalty to many people by accident. But yeah, I mean, I'm not technically in a clan really. Thank you for the question. Next we have Zachary Brinson. Coffee or tea? I think from my accent you can tell that I'm going to say tea. Next we have Neith Izar. Collab with Biscuits and Tea Gaming. I'm almost entirely sure that he doesn't know who I am. So, I mean, that's unlikely. I'll never say never, but I mean, it's unlikely that sort of more established YouTubers that actually do this for a living are even aware of my existence, to be honest with you. Getting a shout out from Pixelated Apollo was actually a fairly large surprise to me. But yeah. Bimla Gotra, once again, where do you think, in which direction would Reforged be heading, like meta-wise in regards to upcoming new factions? So, I think where Reforged heads meta-wise really just does depend on how strong the new things that the devs add or tweak happen. So I can't really make a prediction with where the meta's going to go. But the new upcoming factions, I do have sort of a basic outline of what they are. So with regards to the Dwarves of Ered Luin, the Dwarves of the Blue Mountains, they will still have sort of similar things to the other dwarves. So obviously you're going to have really strong infantry and the like. But they are going to be more lightly armoured than their cousins from further east. And that is going to sort of be reflected in the way that I play, I would imagine. So there's going to be a little bit more, I would suppose, a bit more of a ranged focus around them. So they're probably going to have more in the way of like whatever the dwarf equivalent of like sort of light archers would be. But ultimately that's more going to be sort of a flavour that they have going for them. They're still obviously going to be really strong with regards to their heavy infantry, both shielded and shock infantry and that sort of thing. But if you want to be a dwarf faction that's maybe a little bit more mobile, I guess the best comparison I would say would be, if anyone's ever played Warhammer, the difference between the dwarves at Karaz Akarak and the dwarves of Belagar Ironhammer. Belagar's dwarves are a little bit more sort of, obviously he's got access to his rangers and all of his sort of lighter units and so on, and he's sort of more of a roaming faction, that sort of thing. I would imagine that that's kind of the dynamic that will spring up. Different, obviously, in sort of viewed through the lens of Medieval 2, more so than Warhammer, of course, but I'd imagine that's going to be fairly similar. And Dol Guldur are, again, going to be more of a swarm faction. Their whole thing that Kuro's told me about is the fact that they are going to have sort of very good morale. So they're going to sort of be able to stick in a fight for a very long time, for the most part. But if they start to lose their leadership, that's sort of tying the army together, their morale will crash through the floor. So it's almost like an orcish extreme in many ways, where the loss of the captain will cause the rabble to break, but as long as that captain remains standing, they can be very, very difficult to get rid of. Kind of interesting. I think I would be interested to see how Dol Guldur especially will factor into things, because I think they're sort of the more unique of the two in how they're sort of intended to be implemented. I think with Ered Luin you can kind of see clearly the kind of direction that the devs will be going in there. But with Dol Guldur, in order to make that work, I mean, they do run the risk of either making it so too strong, in which case Dol Guldur will just never rout, or too weak, in sort of it's easy to sort of snipe out the Dol Guldur leadership and then everything fall apart. It'll be an interesting balancing act to see how that works. But yeah, that's how I would sort of predict they'll be going. So I hope that answers your question. Next we have Laug Christofferson. How are you doing? I'm doing good. I'm doing alright, to be fair. And then we have Senti Yanga. Can the Palace Guard be considered stronger than the Dwarven elites? I'm not sure stronger would be the right word. I think more versatile would probably be the right word for them. They're faster, and they have a big anti-cavalry bonus to Palace Guard, which is an advantage over the Dwarven elites. But they're not going to do as much damage against sort of heavily armoured targets as something like the Mithril Guard or the Dragon Slayers. And obviously then you have the... Well, actually, I say the Mithril Guard. The Guards of Khazad-dûm are now the armour-piercing variant, aren't they? And also they don't have the 3 hit points that the Mithril Guard have. So I would say no, they can't be considered stronger, but I wouldn't consider them weaker than most of the Dwarven elites either. Like, it's just... They're more versatile, which I think is a massive point in their favour. And it's one of the main reasons why, as a single unit, I would probably prefer the Palace Guard over most of the Dwarven elites, but that is as a single unit. The big advantage the Dwarves have is they can field multiple bodyguard elite units, which is a whole nother matter. But yeah, I mean, no, I wouldn't consider them stronger. I'd consider them more versatile. Next, Gilbert Payne. What is your favourite and least favourite 3 factions? To sort of condense that down into 3, I'd say favourite 3 factions. Let's go for a little bit of variety in playstyle here. I definitely put Lothlorien and Rudauer up there, I think. And who else should we put? We'll put Gondor, I think, because that's sort of Rudauer for the aggression, Gondor for the defence, and then Lothlorien can be sort of both, depending on how you play them. Least favourite, I mean, Erebor and the Shire, I think, have to be up there because of how annoying it is to face the Shire and how Erebor are Erebor. I think I talked about them plenty. That's not really like them being weak, though. That's just me not liking where Erebor are meta-wise, and it's not liking just my personal distaste for playing against the Hobbits because of how awkward they are to fight. Another one's quite difficult, to be honest with you, because like I'm not really opposed to many factions, to be honest with you. I suppose you gotta give it to another crossbow heavy faction, which I suppose you would give that to Cardolan, maybe, just because of how Cardolan can wall up behind their pikes and you can't really skirmish with their crossbows too effectively because they're all heavily armoured and shielded, which means they can sit and take punishment. So I suppose you'd say that, but I don't dislike Cardolan, that's the thing. But I suppose that's how you'd have to say it. Another question from Bimler. Which is the strongest infantry faction? I assume you mean in Reforged. I think in the current state of play, I think you could say it's Khazad-dûm. I think the addition of armour piercing to the First Legion has probably put them over the edge as being the strongest infantry faction. I'm sure that Imladris would have something to say about that, but I think as a pure infantry faction, you'd give it to Khazad-dûm. When you factor in on an open field the Imladris cavalry, things get a little bit messier. But from a pure infantry standpoint, I'd say it's Khazad-dûm. Next we have Skized. Hello, Nor. In the Silmarillion, it's said that the Númenóreans could barely make out Avalon on Eressa when standing on Menaltama during a clear day. But this was in the Second Age before the fall of Númenor, when Arda was made round. So wouldn't that mean that Pelori and especially Taniquetil would be clearly visible? Well, I mean, it gets misty out at sea, you know? I mean, I live on the coast, so I mean, you know, the Númenóreans, it's got to be foggy, you know? So, I mean, you've got to give them the benefit of the doubt there. Also, the glare from our Pharazon's golden Pope hat probably would make it difficult to make things out from a distance. Actually, some replies. What have we got going on here? No. Okay. So that's pretty much it with regards to just this basic little Q&A that I did. I mean, I wanted to do something quickly because of how sort of the 5,000 subs thing snuck up on me. So even this will be a little bit after the 5,000 milestone has come and gone, but at least this means I've done something close to the time, and hopefully within the next week or so something else will also be forthcoming, because it is my intention to finally stop being such a fool and do a stream. I mean, I have been talking to I have spoken a little bit with J Monster about this, but hopefully I can do a stream. Now, whether streaming becomes a regular thing or not, I'm not sure, because again, I'm not sure that I have the ability to be able to commit to this sort of thing on a regular basis. But yeah, I mean, streaming is one of those things that if you want to be a success in this space, like, you kind of need to. I really don't think that it's a difficult one, but yes, I think I will do at least a stream for this. What form that stream will take is kind of up in the air at the moment, but it is my intention to do a stream in the near future, so that I can at least say that I've done it for the milestone purposes. But again, I'm not sure whether it will become a regular occurrence or not. It kind of depends on how it's received, I suppose. Like, if there's not a lot of clamour for it, then it'll just be sort of a one-off thing, and we can put it away for another milestone, perhaps. But if people do want me to do it more, I suppose I could be persuaded to make it a regular occurrence. But we'll have to wait and see, won't we? But yeah, I think to close just this little ramble that I've gone on, thank you. I didn't really expect that anyone would care much what I had to say in the cold, harsh world of YouTube. But I have been pleasantly surprised by how well things have gone, to be honest with you. And I have to say that I like the community that has sprung up as well, like around Reforged and the like. There's obviously been some unfortunate comment trains, shall we say, but that's kind of unavoidable. But the community for the most part is a very good one, and on YouTube that's a rare enough thing, isn't it? So yeah, once again, big thank you to everyone who's subscribed to me, because it's sort of given me, that's also something that has given me the motivation to keep going, to get back to J Monster's comment, the fact that my channel has never really completely stalled out. Like, there's always been forward momentum of some sort, and hopefully that continues. We'll see how far it goes. Again, I don't really make many long-term plans, because plans can change very quickly, but I'm very willing to just see where this goes, to be honest with you, just see where the road takes me, as it were. So yeah, thank you once again, and I hope you will join me, whatever is next.